The glass in my hand trembled so slightly I hoped no one else could see it. The room around me, warm, golden, filled with laughter and clinking silverware, blurred as the words on that tiny folded slip of paper burned into my mind like fire. "Don't drink that. Your life is in danger, trust me." My heart stuttered. My throat went dry. I had just turned 62 years old, and I had come to Giovanni's Trattoria in Atlanta, Georgia, with my son Marcus and his wife Allison, for what I thought would be a sweet, simple birthday dinner. Never, not in my wildest dreams, did I imagine my life would teeter on the edge of death, between one sip of red wine and the next. I forced myself to place the glass back down on the table as naturally as possible, the ruby liquid catching the light of the candle that flickered between us. Marcus was smiling, his eyes soft with love, his voice full of affection as he said, "Mom, you look radiant tonight." He didn't notice the way my smile faltered. Allison sat across from me, her face lit by the warm glow, her lips pulled back in that stiff, polite grin I'd grown accustomed to. A daughter-in-law's smile that never quite reached her eyes. She looked like she belonged in a magazine with her sleek dark hair and carefully tailored blouse, but something in her demeanor had always unsettled me. Tonight, though, that unease had multiplied. The way her gaze kept flicking toward my glass, then darting away, set off alarm bells I could no longer ignore. Just 10 minutes earlier, everything had been ordinary, joyful even. Marcus had ordered the wine, a California Cabernet Sauvignon, because he knew it was my favorite. The restaurant buzzed with other families celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, or simply life itself. The wooden tables gleamed under the soft lights, the air fragrant with garlic, basil, and the sweetness of tomatoes simmering in sauce. I'd chosen my usual chicken parmesan. Marcus had gone for spaghetti bolognese, and Allison ordered a Caesar salad with that airy excuse about watching her figure. Our conversations had flowed easily at first. Marcus talking about work at the State Farm office downtown, me chatting about gardening and senior yoga at the YMCA, while Allison kept fidgeting with her phone like a teenager. If only I had paid more attention to her hands trembling slightly when she raised her glass earlier, or the way her eyes seemed sharper than usual when Marcus wasn't looking. When Marcus gave his heartfelt toast. To Mom, the strongest woman I know. I had been on the verge of tears, my heart swelling with love. It had seemed like a perfect moment. Then the young waitress, a slip of a girl with brown hair pulled into a ponytail, had leaned over the table as though to wipe a spot, slipping that folded piece of paper beside my plate. Her eyes had locked with mine for the briefest, most urgent second before she walked away. It had been such a small gesture, so subtle, Marcus and Allison hadn't noticed at all. But when I unfolded that note beneath the table, my entire world had shifted. I excused myself, pretending to need the restroom, my hands trembling as I slipped the note into my pocket. My legs felt like water as I hurried down the hallway, my mind spinning. The handwriting was rushed but unmistakably desperate. Who was this waitress? How could she possibly know something about my drink? My reflection in the restroom mirror looked like a ghost's, my carefully curled hair still in place, my birthday blouse still crisp, but my eyes wide, frightened, searching for answers. For one mad moment, I considered crumpling the note, flushing it down the toilet, pretending I'd never seen it, but I couldn't. The warning echoed in my head with every beat of my heart. Returning to the table, I tried to paste on a smile. Marcus chatted happily about renovating his kitchen, oblivious. Allison's eyes kept darting between me and the wine glass. Every time her gaze landed on it, something flickered across her face. Expectation, maybe. Or was it tension? Fear? I couldn't be sure. What I was sure of was this. Something was very wrong. And if I didn't act quickly, I might not live long enough to see the cake. The decision came in an instant. Marcus turned to flag down our server for more bread. Allison's eyes flicked to her phone. With one casual movement, I slid my glass across the table, switching it with hers. The wine looked identical in both glasses. The same dark red, the same sheen. My pulse thundered in my ears as I raised what was now Allison's glass, holding it high. "A toast," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "To family." Allison lifted her own glass, unaware it had been switched. She smiled tightly. "To family," she echoed, her hand trembling just slightly. Marcus beamed and clinked his glass with ours. The three of us drank. The wine tasted the same as always, smooth, rich, with notes of black cherry and oak. But I barely tasted it. I was watching Allison, watching for something, for the truth. At first, nothing happened. Marcus kept talking about his promotion at work. I pretended to listen, and Allison forced herself to join in. But I noticed her shifting in her seat more than usual, her fingers twitching. I waited. And then, 5 minutes later, it began. Allison's hand pressed to her stomach. Her brows furrowed. She muttered, "I feel funny." Marcus's head snapped toward her, concern immediately washing over his face. "Honey, are you okay?" She shook her head weakly. "Maybe something I ate." Her complexion paled by the second. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her hands trembled violently now, no longer just from nerves. My heart pounded as I watched her crumble before my eyes. When she tried to stand, her knees buckled. Marcus caught her just before she hit the floor. "Call 911, I heard myself shouting, my voice oddly calm despite the chaos unraveling. Other diners gasped, voices rose, waiters rushed over, the restaurant's golden warmth now fractured by fear. Allison collapsed back into her chair, gasping, her skin taking on a grayish hue. The ambulance ride was a blur. Marcus sat beside me, gripping my hand like a lifeline, his other hand clutched tightly to Allison's limp one. The note burned in my pocket, the weight of it as heavy as a stone. I stared at Allison unconscious on the stretcher as paramedics worked frantically. My mind reeled. If I hadn't switched the glasses, if that waitress hadn't slipped me that note, it would be me lying there instead. The fluorescent lights of St. Jude Medical Center felt harsh, unforgiving. The air reeked of disinfectant. Allison was whisked away behind swinging doors, Marcus pacing the waiting area like a caged lion. He kept repeating, "She was fine an hour ago. She was fine an hour ago." His voice cracked each time. I said nothing, not yet. I couldn't. The truth sat bitter in my chest, heavy, waiting for the right moment to spill out. When the doctor finally approached, his serious eyes told me everything before his words did. "Your wife is stable for now," he said to Marcus. "But we found something concerning in her blood work. Extremely high levels of digoxin." Marcus frowned. "Digoxin? What is that?" The doctor leaned forward. "A heart medication. In small, controlled doses, it can regulate rhythm, but the amount in her system was potentially lethal." The room tilted around me. My pulse roared in my ears. Marcus shook his head. No, that doesn't make sense. Are you saying she was poisoned?" The doctor hesitated. "I can't say who administered it, but I can say this amount didn't enter her system accidentally. We'll need to notify the police." My hand slipped into my pocket, my fingers closing around the folded note. It was time. I pulled it out and slid it across to Marcus. His eyes scanned the words, his face draining of color. "Mom, what is this? Where did you get this?" Quietly, I told him everything. The waitress, the note, my decision to switch the glasses. As I spoke, I watched the horror dawning on his face, his entire body trembling as though the ground beneath him had vanished. "No," he whispered. "No, that can't be right. You're saying someone tried to poison you." I met his eyes. My voice shook, but the truth came out steady. "That's exactly what I'm saying." The silence between Marcus and me after I revealed the note felt unbearable. He sat with his head in his hands, rocking slightly, his breath uneven. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, his voice raw. "It doesn't make sense, Mom. Why would anyone want to hurt you?" His eyes lifted to mine, glassy and searching for an answer I didn't want to say aloud. Not yet. Because the truth, the horrifying truth that had been tightening its grip around my heart, was sitting right in front of us in that hospital bed. The door swung open, and the doctor returned with a nurse. "We'll need to keep Mrs. Whitlock under close observation," he said. "But there's more. We found traces of alcohol in her system, and when combined with the digoxin, it intensified the toxicity. If she hadn't gotten here as quickly as she did..." He trailed off, not needing to finish. Marcus squeezed his eyes shut, his knuckles white as he gripped the arm of the chair. I could barely breathe. The doctor hesitated before continuing. "We're running additional panels, but I should warn you, this isn't likely her first exposure." From the patterns we're seeing, Mrs. Whitlock may have been ingesting smaller amounts of cardiac medication over time. The words slammed into me like a freight train. Smaller amounts over time. My chest tightened as the puzzle pieces began to rearrange themselves into a picture so monstrous I wanted to claw it apart. The dizziness I'd felt in recent months, the fatigue, the way I'd second-guessed myself, wondering if maybe my memory was slipping. And Allison, always hovering, always smiling that thin smile, always with some explanation for why I wasn't myself. My hand flew to my mouth. "Oh my God." Marcus leaned forward, alarm in his voice. What is it, Mom?" I whispered it like a confession. "It wasn't food poisoning. It wasn't stress, Marcus. Someone has been poisoning me. Slowly." His face twisted with disbelief. He shook his head violently, as if he could shake the words out of existence. No. Don't say that. Don't even—" He broke off, pacing the room like a man possessed. "This is insane. Who would do that? Who would—" His voice cracked, and then it hit him. I saw it hit him. The moment of realization he tried desperately to push away. His eyes widened, his lips parted, and he looked at me with such agony I thought I might collapse. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Are you saying—" "Allison?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence was the loudest answer of all. Marcus stumbled back a step, as if the very air around him had turned poisonous. No, she takes care of you. She's been worried about you for months. He stopped himself, his expression shifting as memories crashed down on him. His voice turned hollow. She said you were forgetting things, that sometimes you didn't recognize her. She told me we should start talking about care options." The words gutted me. My knees went weak, and I sank into the cold plastic chair. "Care options?" My voice trembled. "Marcus, I am not confused. I know exactly who I am. I know exactly what's been happening. Don't you see?" She was laying the groundwork, making you think I was slipping away. His face crumpled. He pressed his hands to his head as though it might explode. Oh God, what did I do?" His voice broke on the last word, and for a long moment, the only sound in the sterile waiting room was his ragged breathing and the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The nurse returned, interrupting the spiral. "Mrs. Montgomery, the police are here to speak with you." I looked at Marcus, who looked utterly shattered, and I whispered, "We need to tell them everything." Detective Lieutenant Lee walked in, a woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back neatly, her eyes sharp and unyielding. She introduced herself with a calm authority that instantly steadied me. "Mrs. Montgomery, I understand you have some information that may be relevant to what happened tonight." With trembling hands, I handed her the note. She read it carefully, her expression tightening with each second. Then I told her everything, from the waitress sliding me the message to my decision to switch the glasses. I could feel Marcus's eyes on me the whole time, burning with guilt, horror, and dawning realization. Detective Lee closed the note and looked at me with grave seriousness. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Montgomery. And from what you've described, it's very likely your life was in danger tonight." The words should have comforted me. Instead, they left me cold. Marcus leaned forward, his voice hoarse. "But why? Why would Allison want to hurt my mother? She's my wife. She's supposed to be family." His voice broke on that last word, raw and wounded. Detective Lee didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "We'll need to investigate thoroughly before drawing any conclusions. But I will tell you this. Based on the toxicology reports and Mrs. Montgomery's symptoms, it appears this has been going on for some time. That means tonight may not have been an isolated event. It may have been the culmination of something much larger." My hands shook as I clasped them together in my lap. My voice was barely audible. "You mean, she's been trying to kill me for months?" The detective's silence was confirmation enough. Marcus made a sound, half sob, half growl, and slammed his fist against the wall. "No, this isn't real. It can't be real." But the look on his face told me that deep down, he already knew it was. The detective asked us a series of questions. Had I noticed anything unusual in my food or drinks? Had Allison been bringing me things often? Had I felt ill? With each question, a memory surfaced like a ghost rising from the depths. The soup Allison had brought me 2 months ago. after which I'd felt so sick I couldn't get out of bed. The tea she'd insisted I drink for my nerves, which had left me dizzy and forgetful. The vitamins she claimed were for her but kept hidden in her purse. Every incident I had dismissed as age or stress now revealed itself for what it was. A carefully orchestrated plan to weaken me, confuse me, make me doubt my own mind. By the time the detective finished her questions, Marcus looked hollow, a shadow of himself. He turned to me, his eyes wet and haunted. "Mom, she made me believe you were losing your memory. Every time she came home and told me you'd forgotten something, I believed her. God help me, I believed her." I reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "You wanted to believe she cared. That doesn't make you guilty. She fooled us both." He shook his head violently. "No, Mom, I should have seen it. I should have protected you." Before I could respond, the door opened again. It was the doctor, his expression grim. "We've confirmed the presence of multiple cardiac medications in Mrs. Whitlock's system. This wasn't a one-time ingestion. She has been receiving small doses over an extended period." The world tilted. My breath caught. My stomach lurched. The doctor continued. "From what we can tell, the dosages were high enough to cause confusion, fatigue, and dizziness, but not immediate death. Whoever administered them likely wanted to create the appearance of a gradual decline." My voice cracked. "Like dementia." The doctor nodded gravely. "Exactly." Marcus staggered back, his hand over his mouth, his body trembling. He whispered, "Oh God. She was preparing everyone to believe you were sick. She was planning to—" He couldn't finish. He didn't have to. The detective looked at me with steady eyes. "Mrs. Montgomery, I need to ask, do you have a will?" I nodded slowly, my stomach twisting. "Yes, Marcus is my beneficiary." Detective Lee turned to Marcus. "And did your wife know that?" His silence was the answer. The room felt smaller, suffocating. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear nothing else for a moment. The truth pressed down on me with unbearable weight. My daughter-in-law, the woman who had smiled across the table from me, who had raised a glass in my honor, had been trying to erase me from this world, not out of rage, not out of madness, but out of cold, calculated greed. The detective closed her notebook and rose to leave. "We'll be back in touch soon. For now, Mrs. Montgomery, I suggest you don't leave the hospital alone tonight, just to be safe." Her words lingered long after she left. Marcus sat in silence, staring at the floor, his face pale and drawn. I touched his arm gently. "Marcus, this isn't your fault." But he didn't answer. He couldn't. His entire world had just shattered. And mine would never be the same again. The night dragged on in a blur of hospital beeps, murmured voices in the hallway, and Marcus sitting motionless in the corner, his face buried in his hands. I drifted in and out of restless sleep, waking every time a nurse entered to check my vitals. Each time I opened my eyes, I half expected to see Allison standing there, her perfect smile masking the venom underneath. But she didn't come. She never came. When the gray light of dawn crept into the room, Marcus finally stirred. His eyes were bloodshot, his face haggard. He hadn't slept at all. He looked at me with such raw sorrow it nearly broke me. "Mom," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "What if the detective's right? What if she's been planning this for months? How do I even look at her again?" I wanted to comfort him, to tell him everything would be okay, but the truth stuck like a shard of glass in my throat. Nothing about this was okay. "Marcus," I said gently, "you don't have to figure it all out right now. You just have to believe what's in front of you. Trust the evidence. Trust your heart." He nodded weakly, but I could see the war raging inside him. Allison was his wife. He had built a life with her. And now, that life was crumbling beneath his feet. The door creaked open, and I froze. But it wasn't Allison. It was Detective Lee. She entered briskly, carrying a folder, her eyes sharp as ever. "Mrs. Montgomery, Mr. Montgomery, I need to update you." Marcus straightened in his chair, his jaw tight. "Did you find something?" Detective Lee set the folder on the table and opened it. Inside were several photographs, lab reports, and what looked like bank statements. She tapped one page with her finger. "We traced the prescription of the digoxin. It wasn't filled under your name, Mrs. Montgomery, or under Marcus's, but it was picked up by someone in your household." Marcus's face drained of color. "Allison," Detective Lee nodded. We have surveillance footage from the pharmacy. It shows your wife at the counter, signing for the medication. We also pulled security camera footage from the restaurant last night. The exchange with the waitress is clear. Someone slipped her a note to give to your mother. We're working to identify who that person was. I leaned forward, my heart hammering. So she really did this. The detective's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. Mrs. Montgomery, I cannot legally say anything conclusive until charges are filed. But the evidence is compelling. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing the room with shaking hands. What do I do? Do I confront her? He stopped, clutching his head. God, I don't even know if I can face her. Detective Lee raised a hand calmly. Do not confront her. Let us handle this. If she senses suspicion, she may try to run. Or worse. A chill rippled through me. Worse? The detective met my eyes. She may try again, Mrs. Montgomery, and next time, she might not fail. The air left the room. My chest felt heavy, my pulse frantic. Detective Lee gathered her papers and prepared to leave. We'll need to arrange protective measures. Until then, you're safest staying here or with someone you trust. And Mr. Montgomery, she paused, fixing him with a steady gaze. I know this is difficult, but your cooperation is vital. When she was gone, Marcus sank back into the chair, his face buried in his hands again. Mom, what did I bring into this family? What did I let into our lives? I reached for him, my hand trembling as I touched his arm. Marcus, listen to me. Allison fooled us both. That's not your fault. The only thing that matters now is what you do next. He looked at me with wet, broken eyes. I don't even know if I can protect you from her. You already are, I whispered. By believing me, by standing with me. That's more protection than you realize. The hours passed slowly. I tried to eat the bland hospital breakfast, but every bite turned to dust in my mouth. Marcus kept checking his phone, glancing at the door, jumping at every sound in the hallway. I knew what he was waiting for. And when the inevitable happened, when the door finally opened to reveal Allison standing there, it felt as though the walls closed in around me. She looked flawless, as always. Her hair neatly styled, her dress crisp, her expression calm and composed. But her eyes flicked to the IV in my arm, to the monitors around me, to Marcus's strained face. For a fraction of a second, her mask slipped. I saw it, the flicker of calculation, the cold assessment. Then the smile returned. Oh, Mother, she said warmly, gliding toward me with outstretched arms. What a frightful scare you gave us last night. I stiffened, my body recoiling even as she leaned down to kiss my cheek. I smelled the faint trace of her perfume, sweet and cloying, the same perfume I'd smelled lingering on the wineglass before I switched it. My stomach lurched. Marcus stepped between us quickly, his voice sharp. That's close enough, Allison. Her eyes widened, then narrowed almost imperceptibly. What's wrong with you? She asked softly, her tone full of wounded innocence. I rushed here the moment I heard. I barely slept. And this is how you greet me? Marcus's hands trembled at his sides. Don't play games with me. She tilted her head, her lips parting as though in shock. Games? Marcus, I don't know what you're talking about. I forced myself to speak, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Allison, I know. Her head snapped toward me, her eyes flashing. For the briefest moment, all pretense vanished. The smile dropped. The warmth disappeared. What stared back at me was ice cold. Then, just as quickly, the mask slipped back on. She let out a light laugh. Know what, Mother? That you're unwell? That's hardly news. Marcus's voice rose, filled with anguish. Stop it, Allison, just stop. We know about the digoxin. We know about the prescriptions. We know you've been giving it to her. Silence crashed into the room like thunder. Allison stood perfectly still, her smile frozen, her eyes unreadable. Then she let out a soft sigh. Marcus, I don't know what kind of lies your mother has been feeding you, but this is too much. You can't possibly believe enough. Marcus's shout shook the room. His voice cracked under the weight of betrayal. I saw the footage. The detective showed us. You can't talk your way out of this. For the first time, Allison's composure faltered. Her nostrils flared, her hands tightened into fists at her sides. How dare you! She hissed, her voice low and venomous. After everything I've done for this family, after everything I've sacrificed. Her words dripped with resentment, and in that moment, I realized just how deep her anger ran. She didn't see herself as guilty. She saw herself as wronged. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. "You tried to kill my mother." Allison's gaze snapped to me, her eyes blazing. "You should have stepped aside gracefully. You've had your time. But no, you had to cling, to meddle, to stand in the way." My blood ran cold. There it was, the mask ripped away, the truth exposed in her own words. Marcus staggered back as if struck. "Oh God," he whispered. "It's true." Before he could say more, Allison's expression hardened into something unrecognizable. Her lips curled into a thin, dangerous smile. "You think you've won because you've caught me? You think this is over?" She leaned forward slightly, her eyes boring into mine. "It's just beginning." A shiver tore through me, deeper than any chill I'd ever known. And then she turned, her heels clicking against the tile floor, and swept out of the room without another word. Marcus collapsed into the chair, trembling uncontrollably. "What have I done, Mom?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "What have I brought into this family?" I sat in stunned silence, my heart pounding against my ribs, my throat tight with fear, because I knew in that moment that Allison wasn't done. She had shown her hand, but she hadn't lost. Not yet. And as the door closed behind her, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real nightmare was only just beginning. The room felt haunted after Allison's departure, as though her presence still lingered, clinging to the walls, seeping into the sterile air. Marcus sat motionless, staring at the door she'd just walked through. His face was a map of devastation, lines etched deep by grief, anger, and something worse, self-blame. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, covering his face instead. His shoulders shook, and I realized he was crying silently, his body trembling under the weight of emotions he could no longer contain. "Marcus," I whispered, "don't do this to yourself. You couldn't have known." He shook his head violently, his voice muffled by his hands. "I let her in, Mom. I let her into our lives, into our home. I defended her when you doubted her. And now she's been—" He broke down again, unable to finish. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She fooled us both. You can't punish yourself for her sins." But I knew my words barely scratched the surface of his pain. The day passed in fragments. Nurses checking my vitals, doctors murmuring about lab results, Marcus pacing the floor like a caged animal. He refused to eat. He refused to sleep. Every time the door opened, his body stiffened, as though he expected Allison to reappear. By late afternoon, Detective Lee returned. She closed the door behind her, her expression grim. "We've issued a warrant," she said, "but Allison hasn't been home. Her phone is off. We're trying to track her car, but so far she's vanished." Marcus's head snapped up. "Vanished? What do you mean, vanished?" Detective Lee set her folder on the table. "She's gone to ground. People in her situation often do. It's possible she's trying to buy herself time." A chill ran down my spine. "Time for what?" The detective's eyes flicked to me. "To come up with a new plan." Marcus slammed his fist against the wall. "We need to find her before she does something else." Detective Lee remained calm. "We're doing everything we can. In the meantime, I strongly advise both of you to remain under protective watch. Mrs. Montgomery, you're vulnerable. And Marcus," her voice softened slightly, "you're emotionally tied to her. That makes you vulnerable too." Marcus bristled. "I'm not weak." "No one said you were," Detective Lee replied evenly. "But betrayal of this magnitude can cloud judgment. I've seen it happen too many times." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but I placed a hand on his arm. "She's right, son. We have to be careful." That night, the hospital room felt less like a place of healing and more like a fortress. Every shadow seemed menacing, every creak in the hallway a warning. Marcus insisted on staying by my side, though I could see the toll it was taking on him. His eyes were sunken, his movements jittery. Around midnight, as the monitors beeped softly in the dark, I heard his phone buzz. He glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. He showed it to me, a message from an unknown number. It read, "You can't hide her forever." My blood froze. It's her. Marcus's hand shook as he typed a response, but I grabbed his wrist. No, don't answer. That's what she wants. His jaw clenched, but he nodded, slipping the phone into his pocket. Minutes later, another message came through. Check under your car before you drive again. Marcus swore under his breath, his face drained of color. He stood abruptly, storming toward the door, but I called after him. Don't! Marcus, wait! Detective Lee arrived within the hour, summoned by Marcus's report. She listened carefully, her expression darkening with each word. This is escalation, she said. She's not just running, she's taunting. Testing how far she can push! Marcus's voice shook with fury. Then let's push back. Arrest her already! We will, Detective Lee said firmly. But until then, you must stay vigilant. Both of you. The following days blurred into one another. I remained in the hospital, under observation and protection. Marcus stayed by my side, though his strength seemed to dwindle with each passing hour. He was a man caught between two worlds. The love he thought he had, and the reality that had been ripped away. And then, on the third night, everything shattered. I woke to the sound of movement in the room. At first, I thought it was a nurse, but the figure standing in the corner was too still, too deliberate. My heart slammed against my ribs as my eyes adjusted to the dim light. It was Allison. She stood in the shadows, her face half hidden, her eyes glinting with something unholy. She was holding something in her hand, a syringe. I opened my mouth to scream, but she pressed a finger to her lips. Shh, Mother. You'll wake him. Marcus stirred in the chair beside me, half asleep, unaware of the danger inches away. Allison. My voice cracked. Don't do this. Her smile was cold, almost pitying. You don't understand, do you? You were never supposed to be here this long. You've held on too tightly. And now everything is unraveling because of you. I forced myself to stay calm, though terror coursed through me. You don't have to do this. There's still time to stop, to walk away. Her eyes hardened. Walk away with what? Nothing? After everything I've invested? No, Mother. You've left me no choice. She stepped closer, the syringe glinting in the dim light. My pulse raced. My breath came in ragged gasps. I glanced desperately at Marcus, willing him to wake, to see, to save me. But Allison was faster. She raised the syringe, her hand steady, her expression serene. And just as she leaned forward, Marcus's eyes flew open. For a moment he looked confused, disoriented. Then he saw the syringe. Allison, he roared, leaping to his feet. She spun toward him, her mask cracking into raw fury. Stay out of this, Marcus! But he lunged, grabbing her wrist. The syringe slipped from her grasp and clattered to the floor. They struggled violently, her nails clawing at his arms, his voice hoarse with desperation. Why? Why are you doing this? Her scream was primal, tearing through the room. Because she never belonged. Because you were supposed to be mine, and she never let go. The sound of rushing footsteps filled the hall as nurses and security burst in. They pulled Allison away, her face twisted with rage, her body thrashing against their grip. She screamed my name, over and over, her voice echoing like a curse. Mother, you'll regret this. You'll regret this. They dragged her out, her screams fading into the distance. I sat frozen, trembling violently, unable to breathe. Marcus dropped to his knees beside me, his face pale, his chest heaving. Mom, oh God, Mom, I almost lost you. I clutched his hands, my voice shaking. She's dangerous, Marcus. More dangerous than we realized. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know, and I swear, I'll never let her near you again. But deep in my gut, I felt no relief, because even as Allison was dragged away, her words echoed in my mind. You'll regret this. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this nightmare was far from over. The hospital halls felt strangely empty after Allison was dragged away, though her voice still clung to the air like smoke from a fire that refused to die out. You'll regret this. You'll regret this. Those words didn't just echo. They burrowed into me, whispering in the quiet moments, gnawing at the edges of every fragile breath. Marcus sat slumped in the chair beside me, his head buried in his hands. He hadn't spoken in nearly an hour, his body vibrating with the kind of silent grief that words can't carry. His wife had just been exposed as a predator, a would-be murderer, but she was also the woman he had shared his bed with, the woman he'd trusted with his heart. "Marcus," I said softly, my voice trembling from exhaustion and fear. "You saved me." He looked up, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. "I should have saved you sooner." His voice cracked. "How many times did you try to tell me something wasn't right, Mom?" And I defended her. God help me, I defended her. "You were deceived," I whispered. "Don't carry her sins on your back." But I knew my words wouldn't reach him. Not yet. Betrayal this deep leaves wounds no reassurance can heal overnight. By dawn, detectives swarmed the hospital, their voices hushed but urgent. Detective Lee arrived, her expression unreadable as she pulled Marcus and me aside. "Allison has been taken into custody," she said firmly. "We've recovered the syringe she tried to use tonight. It tested positive for a concentrated dose of digoxin, the same substance found in her system when she collapsed." If Marcus hadn't intervened, she let the sentence hang, unfinished. I shivered, clutching the thin blanket tighter around me. Marcus's jaw clenched. "She'll be in prison for this, right? Tell me she'll never get near my mother again." Detective Lee hesitated, and that pause was like ice water down my spine. "She's being charged," Lee confirmed. "Attempted murder. But you need to understand something, both of you. Allison isn't cooperating. She's claiming innocence. Says she was framed, that someone planted evidence. And she has a lawyer already working to spin the narrative." Marcus's hands curled into fists. "Framed? She tried to kill my mother in front of me." "I know," Detective Lee said gently. "But in court, the defense will challenge every piece of evidence. They'll call you an emotional husband. They'll say your mother's memory is unreliable given her age. And they'll exploit every detail they can to weaken the case. We'll fight it, but you need to be prepared." The thought of Allison slithering her way out of justice made bile rise in my throat. "She has to pay for this," I whispered. "She can't hurt anyone else." Detective Lee's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "We'll do everything we can. But I want you both to understand. Allison is cunning. She doesn't give up easily." And that was when the fear hit me anew. Not of what she had done, but of what she might still do. The weeks that followed were a blur of hospital visits, police interviews, and sleepless nights. Marcus moved back into my house temporarily, refusing to let me stay alone. He installed new locks, cameras, and alarms, becoming obsessed with security. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of shadow outside sent him spiraling into panic. I tried to be strong for him, but the truth was, I lived in fear too. Even behind locked doors, I didn't feel safe. I would wake in the night convinced Allison was in the hallway, syringe in hand, her shadow spilling across my door. The trial date was set 6 months later. In that time, Allison's name flooded the news. Atlanta woman charged with attempted murder of mother-in-law, neighbors whispered. Friends called in shock. Some even sent flowers pitying me for what I'd endured. But sympathy didn't erase the terror. On the morning of the trial, I dressed carefully, my hands trembling as I buttoned my blouse. Marcus stood beside me in his suit, looking older than his years, his eyes heavy with dread. "Mom," he said quietly, "I don't know if I can do this." I cupped his cheek, forcing him to meet my gaze. "You can, because this isn't just about me. It's about every life she would have destroyed if we hadn't stopped her." In the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Allison sat at the defense table, her hair pulled neatly back, her face composed and serene. "If you didn't know better, you would have thought she was a victim, not a predator." She glanced at Marcus once, her expression unreadable, and my son visibly recoiled. When the prosecutor laid out the evidence, the poisoned wine, the syringe, the note from the waitress, Allison barely flinched. Her attorney, a slick man with sharp eyes, painted a different picture. That I was a confused elderly woman, prone to paranoia, that Marcus's grief had clouded his judgment, that the mysterious waitress had concocted her story for attention. I clenched my fists beneath the table, fury burning in my chest. How dare they twist the truth into lies? And then it was my turn to testify. My legs shook as I walked to the stand, but my voice, though trembling at first, grew steadier with each word. I told them about the note. about Allison's subtle manipulations, about the moments I doubted my own sanity because of her constant whispers. I told them about the night she stood over me with the syringe. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Even the jury seemed frozen, their eyes fixed on me. The defense attorney tried to rattle me, throwing sharp questions, suggesting my age made my memory unreliable. But I held my ground. I may be 62, I said firmly, but I know the difference between love and poison. And Allison never loved me. She wanted me gone. Marcus testified next, his voice thick with pain as he recounted the moment he wrestled the syringe from her hand. His words cracked, but his conviction never faltered. Allison never looked at him once. The trial stretched for weeks, each day chipping away at what little strength I had left. And then, finally, the verdict came. Guilty. Allison was sentenced to 25 years in prison. When the gavel fell, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Marcus wrapped his arms around me, holding me as though he'd never let go again. But as the deputies led Allison away in handcuffs, she finally turned her head. Her eyes locked on mine, cold and unwavering, and her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. It was a smile that said, "This isn't over." Even now, months later, that smile haunts me. I live my life. I garden again. I laugh with my friends. I cherish every moment with my son. But sometimes when the house is quiet, I swear I can hear her voice. "You'll regret this." And I wonder, have I really escaped her? Or has she left a shadow that will follow me for the rest of my days?